It's obvious that you listen to this show to hear about and support other people's dreams. But what about yours? What is your dream project? I'm here to help you break through whatever is in the way of your dreams and get you to the finish line. Go to dreamingbigcoaching.com today and take the first step. Literally, it's a button you can click to sign up for a free consultation with me. Let's find out if I can help you reach your goal. Click on Take the First Step. It's that simple to start the rest of your life. Get coached by Rob Southgate at dreamingbigcoaching.com. Look, we're all nerds here. Todd Stashwick's Nerd Circus is a great place to pick up nerdy paraphernalia and groovy wares. How about some sweet lava lamp dice? Or maybe a funky 70s Rec Room Nerd Circus dice box? Does that do anything for you? Need a drink? What about the book Mystic Libations? Critical cocktails for the thirsty adventurer. Look, Todd Stashwick's Nerd Circus is the place for nerdy threads, cool tabletop gifts, and more. Go to thenerdcircus.com and check out the cool stuff. Oh yeah, and let them know the TTRPG Insider sent you. Welcome back to TTRPG Insider. I am your host, Rob Southgate. TTRPG Insider is a podcast about, shockingly enough, tabletop role-playing games. More specifically, about the amazing people that create TTRPGs. Every episode, I interview someone who's involved in the making of games that we all love to play. I want to hear their stories of their lives as game makers, not just a description of their game. You can follow TTRPG Insider on Facebook by searching for TTRPG Insider. We also have a Twitter account, which is ironically named at TTRPG Insider. I plan to add other social media, but for now, those are the best places. If you want to email me, you can send me an email directly to rob@ttrpginsider.com. This month, we are featuring Cthulhu Dreamt by Action Fiction. They have a Kickstarter campaign that is currently running through September 8th, 2023. Please support Cthulhu Dreamt, both financially and by sharing this across your social media. You never know who's going to fall in love with this game. So go to Kickstarter and search for Cthulhu Dreamt, or simply click on the link in our show notes. Today's guest is Snails, a designer/writer on Cthulhu Dreamt by Action Fiction. Here's Snails. Snails, thank you so much for joining me. I am excited to talk to you today. Those of you that have been listening know that in April we are featuring the game Cthulhu Dreamt, and Snails is part of that team. So that's why we are talking to Snails. I'm really excited to talk to you. So first of all, I think before I get into my stuff, why don't you tell people about you, who you are, what you do?
So like you said, my name's Snails. I guess if I had to surmise what I do for Action Fiction is I'm basically like a producer. I do a little bit of everything. I'm an art director for several of our projects. I'm a lead designer. I write. I do whatever really needs to be done. For Cthulhu Dreamt specifically, I've done a bunch of the monsters, some of the actual core game mechanics, specifically in and among the specialties. And then I've also been working on the ARG that we have that's live, which has been a lot of fun and a lot of weirdly a lot of math. Did not expect how much math would be behind hiding a bunch of secret codes, but I suppose I should have expected that.
Yeah. Yeah, not surprising that math is involved, but I guess it took you by surprise.
Yes. I'm not the biggest fan of math, so I try to avoid it where I can, which is weird coming from a game designer, but so whenever it does pop up in my life, I'm like, well, I guess I'm learning how to do this today.
Yeah, no, actually it's not really surprising. It's just like, what I do with marketing and that. When you look at marketing, there are people that are kind of the creatively gifted. There are people that all they do is numbers, and the crossover is there. But man, I'm fine with math, but I'd rather not sit and do it. I would much rather sit on the creation end of it. And I understand the producer thing. I'm like that with what I do, and you have your fingers in all the pies, and that's awesome. What a cool thing. How did you get into producing?
Completely by accident. I met Jaren through a mutual friend. Oh gosh, 3 years ago now. And we had briefly chatted on Twitter over something stupid. I think Vitamin Water had a big meme that was going on, and we had briefly chatted over it. And then we wound up playing a TTRPG together on Saturdays, and that's been going on for like 3 years. But when we were playing, he was like, "Hey, I've got this thing called Monsters of America. Our first Kickstarter just wrapped up, and we're working on our next book already. We have open, basically like auditions for writers. If you want, I can give you the link for it." And I was like, absolutely, I would love to do that. I at the time I was designing stuff for the Dungeon Masters Guild. Um, I've taken it all down since, but I was designed a subclass for charity, and another one as well. Actually, that also involved music, amusingly enough. Um, so I applied, and the rest is kind of history. I started off as a writer, and then I became an art director because they needed one. Initially, I was supposed to be the assistant because I wanted to. I went to school for art, but I didn't finish my degree. Um, Due to health reasons. So I wanted to kind of like get my feet wet and see what being an AD was really all about. And it just kind of wound up that I became the art director. Um, and then after the book was done, and that, well, not really done, but the Kickstarter for the book was done, we had a conversation about the next book in the series, and then it became a conversation about, well, we've become really good friends over this project, so why don't you just join Action Fiction full time?
Cool.
Yes. So it really, I fell into it. is is how I try to explain it. Is I was eager to experience new things and try stuff, and that eagerness came through, and now I'm a core team member, and I just I'm just doing all sorts of stuff.
It's interesting to me. One of my shows is all about business and content creation and everything. One of the podcasts I do, and I'm always looking for those nuggets. And actually, you just gave a great one for this. People that listen to this, they're hearing the behind the scenes on TTRPGs and who makes them, and here's their stories. What you just said was super valuable, and it's something that I found with this community. Just get involved and try things and see where it leads and be open to things. I mean, the fact that you were just open to like, yeah, I'd like to try writing that. I interviewed somebody for the Black Ballad who had said privately, we were talking offline, and they said, yeah, I had never written. And somebody had asked me, hey, you're kind of funny. Could you write something here? And all they did was punch something up, and now they're a writer on RPGs.
Oh
It's
yeah,
like
it's
just because
it's
they were open.
amazing.
Yeah, it's a great
It's
community.
absolutely amazing how that happens. Like, if I could give one piece of advice to anybody who wants to become like a TTRPG designer but doesn't know how, it would be start making stuff immediately. Like, it doesn't matter if it's good or not, just start making it and start joining things. Like, if you see a zine that's like, hey, we're doing a zine for October and we need scary monsters and unique ideas, like, apply. The
See
worst
what
that happens
happens.
is, yeah, the worst that happens is you don't get in. The best case scenario is that you end up in a situation like mine.
Yeah.
And like, there is an element of luck, but Wayne Gretzky said you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take, and I try and live by that.
I thought Michael Scott said that. That's a joke. Uh,
Oh,
so, yeah, I love it. So you said you were playing a TTRPG with Jaron for 3 years. What were you playing, or what are you playing?
we're playing a Legend of Zelda
Oh,
TTRPG.
fun!
Yeah, it's really good. It's a little indie game, fan made completely. And we've been doing it for off and on for 3 years now. We had a big hiatus during restaurants and retail, but it's been going back, and it's really good. It's nice to have that. It's really nice to have like an offline game type deal where it's just a bunch of friends, especially when you design for TTRPGs in general or games. It's really valuable to have time where you're not thinking about
Right. You're
designing or
just
creating
playing.
content. Exactly,
Yeah.
just playing. It reminds you of why you wanted to do it in the first place.
Yeah. Actually, a friend of mine and I, actually, she's three, four friends of mine. I, we had a game. We were playing D&D with this guy who had he's a game designer, and he wanted to GM, and we played. I think we got a whole year of playing with him D&D, and it was like, wow, I hadn't played since high school, and it was really fun. And then he wrote a game called Hideouts and Hoodlums, which is uh it is Golden Age DC. So it's like before Batman. Like
Okay.
Superman's somewhere, but he's not there yet. Green Lantern is very squishy and hardly has any powers. Like that's where it's at. And we played that thing. I want to say 2 years we played every week, and it was fabulous. And it was such a bonding experience. We had so much fun, and it was an indie game. It was just a blast. We still talk about stuff from that. So I understand that kind of bond. I think that's why all of us are here. We all know what that's like. Once you get that bug, man, and then to be able to work in it, what a gift.
Absolutely. Um, it's it's wild. My route here was a little strange because initially I was never going to design for Dungeons and Dragons. I never got the idea to like do anything for it. I never thought that I could like I didn't go to school for game design. I dropped out of 3D art and animation. So I was like but I've always loved telling stories. And it had been years since I had actually played Dungeons and Dragons. Like before 2017, the last edition I had played was 3.5 with friends in high school.
Wow.
So it had been a long time, and actual plays started blowing up. So like Critical Role, the one that I got hooked on was Dice Camera Action, um, just through tangential YouTube channels of the people who were involved in that show. And I was like, wow, this is really cool. I would love it's like a combination of acting and playing D&D, and there's like a whole community of people that do this. I would love to be able um to take part. So I tried, and then I discovered Critical Role because how do you not
Yeah,
discover Critical
everybody
Role?
discovers it, right?
Yeah, like even back then, before it was the massive juggernaut it is now, like it was ubiquitous. So, and then I saw Matthew Mercer designing like content for like the Blood Hunter and other things. So I was, for whatever reason, that guy has a face where it's like, if Matthew Mercer can do it, then I can do it. And I mean that in like the best way possible. Um, so he made it seem so easy. So I started designing and streaming out on actual plays, and now suddenly uh I'm an art director, producer, and
That's
I'm
so
working on
cool.
this really cool thing. Yeah. So you never know how you get to where you're gonna go,
That's
is what I've
right.
discovered.
So with your 3D art that you were going to school for, what was the goal? What did you want to do with that?
Um I have a I have a very specific story I want to tell. I was sitting down one day, and I was trying to figure out what I was going to do. I'd just gotten home from China, where I taught black market English for like 5 months, um, which is way more boring than it sounds. Being a black market English teacher sounds like dramatic and hilarious, but it's really just teaching English, but without the appropriate degrees.
Sure, sure.
um, and I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do, because I was so desperate for work at the time that I literally went to another country and worked illegally because I needed money. And I saw a Pixar short. It's the one about the paper airplane.
Oh yeah,
I can never
so
remember its
good.
name. Yes, but
I
there's
I
no
can't think of the
spoken
name either.
word.
It might be just called Paper or something like that.
Exactly.
But it's great,
Um,
great piece.
yes, amazing piece. But there's no spoken word throughout the thing, just like little grunts that they use to like help like sell action. And it really like clicked with me, because I had always loved about 2D animation is that you don't really need words to like tell a story. So I was thinking it sparked a creative like spark in me, and I thought of like the story that I really wanted to tell, but I was like, you know what, I'm broke. I can't even get a job down the street at the Taco Bell because of the way the economy is at this moment. Um, and like my work history is like funky as hell. Like, how do you write down illegal English teacher in China for 6 months, 5 or
So
six
you were
months?
a black market English teacher, huh?
And yeah, that's looks really good on a on a CV. Um, so I was like, I want to tell this story really bad. I can't afford to pay anybody to do it. And I saw an ad for Full Sail University,
Sure.
and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna apply, and I did. And they were like, it just I started going to school for it. So eventually, I realized that it wasn't for me. And between that and some health issues, I had to drop out. And so I was kind of that's where I wound up kind of listless for a while, but like I've always that's what got me into it is I've always had a specific story I've wanted to tell. And since then, like writing and doing other things, like the number of stories that I want to tell has grown exponentially. So
Sure.
now I feel like I'm never gonna get through the list.
So that story you wanted to tell, the one that seeing the paper airplane thing just lit you up. Have you gotten to tell that story? Have you written a game for it, or has
No,
is it out there yet, or is it still hanging out?
it's still hanging out. I it's the problem is that I have a very specific medium that I want to tell it in, and that is like 2D animation, with no spoken word, just like in Paper Airplane. And I I can't afford to do that yet.
Sure.
So, um, but I have others that I'm looking forward to. I have one called Gray Wall right now that is in progress that I'm working on about a city trapped in a time loop. Um, so think Dungeons and Dragons with Eldritch horror, and it's like, but you repeat the same year leading up to this city's demise over and over and over again. But each time you remember it, so you try a little bit things a
Try
little bit
something a little
different.
differently. Try to, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, that one is a lot of fun to explore because I like grim dark settings in theory. The thing that they all miss for me is hope.
Ah,
Like everybody, like it feels like every grimdark setting always wants to emphasize like the lack of hope and how hopeless the fight is. But what I find interesting as a person and as like a consumer is like um hope when really there's no reason to have any. Like that kind of like um that crazy desperate hope, that like maybe I can do something or that I'm going to stand up and do something even though the odds look overwhelming. So when I thought of Greywall, I was like, what is a hopeless situation? And then like, how do we explore hope as a game mechanic that gets the players involved? So that one I'm still working on. I'm I'm very passionate about it, so it's the side project for now. But I'm hoping I can bring it to um, either um, action fiction in a year or two, or maybe somebody else.
very cool. Yeah. When you're ready with a Kickstarter, let me know, and we'll definitely put you on. Go fund this and promote the heck out of it because I want I have a lot of questions about it. That sounds really cool. We're certainly not going to get into those because you're still working on it. Don't want anybody to steal the idea, but I do think that is really interesting. My whole thing is I love when there's an ethical dilemma, just like you love when there's
Mm-hmm.
hope. I love every time there's a good ethical dilemma, whether I agree with it or not. I'm fascinated. It just hooks me in every freaking time. And when games do
That's
that, I'm just like,
oh,
ooh, I'm in.
absolutely. It makes for very compelling storytelling, and that's part of the reason why I chose time travel. Actually, is because there are a lot of ethical dilemmas that come up with it. Right? If
Sure.
you so imagine, if you will, like an entire city trapped in time. That's like tens of thousands of people. What what happens to like the people in that city that would die normally throughout that year, and then
Right.
suddenly they're alive again? Like it's like if your grandfather is on death's bed for like 6 months out of the year and is having a miserable time, and he's going to die, But like, the city has reset 10 times now, and you've had to like watch him suffer. What is the right thing to do there? Do you let him continually suffer for effectively all eternity, or do you every year do you do the unthinkable and try and ease that passing?
Right. Right. Wow. What a great concept. I love it, man. I think that's very
Yeah,
cool.
there's a reason I'm passionate about it.
Yeah,
Um,
I can understand. So with Cthulhu Dreamt, they brought you in. You're kind of doing all sorts of things with this game. You said that you were involved in a music-based game before. Was it metal like this? Because this is like metal symphony.
oh,
Was it that, or was it something different?
that was for a subclass that I wrote called like the Night of the Void. And it was more that like I hired a composer, like an amateur composer, to make music for the subclass specifically. So I've always loved um, like the idea of combining TTRPGs and music together um, in in like specifically for each other. I think um, I mean, any kid who grew up playing Dungeons and Dragons back in the day, like and like watched Lord of the Rings when it came out or read the books, we've always had like our own little soundtracks in our heads, right? Like
Right.
when you think about your heroic fighter, like there's usually something playing in the background. So the idea of like having an actual real thing that you can listen to has always been fascinating to me. And so when I saw other people doing it, I was like, yeah, even if I can't do it properly, at the time, I think like the Red Opera was blowing up, and then the Bards or whatever um, did something similar. So when I found out about Cthulhu Dreamt being all based around a metal band, I was like, hell yes,
Yeah, hell
let's
yeah, I'm
rock.
in on that one.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because I love this kind of thing too, and especially when you add the music element, like multimedia stuff. I've always been a big fan of. There is a Now I'm going to show how old I am. There's a Mike Nesmith album. Mike Nesmith was the guy with the hat and the monkeys, if you don't know,
Oh, okay.
and
Yep.
he had some incredible solo stuff. You can almost forget the monkey stuff. His stuff was amazing, but he wrote an album called The Prison, and it was you listen to the album, and when you open the gate sleeve, it was like a whole book. You were
Mhm.
supposed to read the book with the songs. And the first time I did it, it was an experience. And ever since doing that, I've been like, yeah, man, let's make setting, let's put music in, not just peripheral music, but music that moves you and gets you going in things. I'm a huge fan of sound, obviously. I mean, what I do, right? Uh, and adding that kind of creativity thing. So I get it. And when you were saying your love of that silent film, I still watch shorts. Like we were just watching George Millet stuff, which is like a million years old, all silent, and it just lights you up. Like the creativity is out of control, right?
Absolutely.
I love it. I love it. If you can express something and make somebody feel and move and have a reaction, and it's just people jumping around with umbrellas on a thing, you know how to tell a story.
Absolutely. And that's if I have one regret about the entertainment media the way that it exists today, is that because how everything is iterative on itself, I feel like a lot of uh the basics, the classics get lost inside of that. And even I'm like guilty of this, where sometimes I will see a thing in media and I will be like, oh, well, this is where this thing is from. It's from this movie in 2010, and it's like, no, actually, it's from even way back before Alfred
Right.
Hitchcock was doing this. So I've been trying to like educate myself more on like the classics and the basics of like film in specific.
Sure.
But like yeah, I've also been I had a moment where I was trying to do that with music as well. Um, and what I found is that a lot of like really big name people inside of the music industry are kind of like nerds.
Oh, totally.
uh, yeah, like Rush is a big example. Like 2112 is like a huge album, and like or song is what do you define 2112 as other than like an experience, right?
You know what? I'm not a Rush fan, but I know people that are, and that's how they would describe it. It's like this visceral experience. It just, oh my god, it just moves them, and that.
Um, so I feel like music and storytelling, they've been connected for a long time, and TTRPGs not having music involved with them kind of feels a little bit like a crime to me. So I'm glad to see that it's happening more and more, and I'm happy to be like a part of that like initial surge of like people doing it.
Yeah, I agree, and it's so cool, and that's one of the things that attracted me to Cthulhu Dreamt. When I saw there was this accompanying soundtrack, and it was like based on this music, and when I was interviewing Reed, he said they have 3 hours of soundtrack already recorded with orchestras and guitars and all this. I was like, I'm all in on that. And then combine it with the artwork. And the artwork I'm seeing so far has been just amazing. I can't wait to get further and further into the world of Cthulhu Dreamt. It's just so cool.
The previous two and a half books that I've worked on, Restaurants and Retail, Cryptid Chronicles, and Chromatic Gamut. My job is basically herding cats as assistant, as like an art director.
Right.
Um, and one of the things that I always make sure to do is encourage my artists with positive, like with praise and feedback, because from stories that I've heard in more professional settings, or other professional settings, I should say, it's very much do this thing. All right, you did this thing, great. Now go on and do the next thing. And art is a very personal experience to create. At least it has always been for me. So, and when I've it was when I tried to take the personality out of it is when I realized I couldn't do it anymore. Um, so the I'm usually like, this looks amazing. You're doing a good job. I love the way that this looks. Here's some feedback for what I want to change for the next thing. For Cthulhu Dreamt, it's been different because it's often me saying something on the lines of, "This is absolutely horrifying and disgusting. Excellent, excellent work. You hit the prompt nail on the head."
Awesome. That's fun. Um, so your experience with, since this is a horror setting, what's your history with horror? Is there any? Are you a horror guy at all?
I love horror. I'm a bit of a wussy, so I tend to prefer to watch horror like with other people, but I can engage in certain types on my own. Horror video games are very difficult to play because they're very like, it's very immersive. So like when you get into it, it's like, oh no, I'm actually scared. Uh, I guess,
Which one scared you the most?
oh God, you know, this is gonna be a little bit of a deep cut, I think. Eternal Darkness, Sanity's Requiem for the
Oh no.
GameCube.
What a great game. I had that on the GameCube. That
Yeah,
is an upsetting game. That's a good one.
that that game that game messed with me in a lot of
Yeah.
really good ways. The fly on the screen effect that they have, where they make it look like a little fly shows up on your screen, and you go to like swat the fly away, and it's like, oh, it's inside the game.
Yeah.
Or when the game tells you that your save file is corrupted, and it's like, excuse me, what?
Right, right. And you think, oh no, and then wait a minute, part of the game.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that was a big inspiration where I was like, I would love to do something like this that takes the genre and like messes with it and is a little bit more meta. I guess not to get too heavy or anything, but I was in a cult as a kid. Um,
Oh,
yeah, so like when I was like 8 years old, I wound up in like an evangelical cult. Um, so like I guess I've been drawn to horror because it's always interesting to me to see what other people think of as like dark. Since I have like a different perspective on like what dark is, and like what the dark side of humanity looks like. So seeing other people's like interpretation of the darkness in humans, and like what we think and what we feel is always fascinating to me.
so are you away from this cult?
Oh yes, have been for decades at this point. Um,
Were you the impetus for getting in the cult, or was it like your family got involved and you were along for the ride?
Family, my mother just met the leader and they became friends, and the rest is history because that's
Yeah.
how they work, right? It all seemed so normal and okay at first, and then once the crazies come out, it's too late.
Yeah.
So but yeah, I've been away for years. I've like been to therapy and talked about it, and um
I don't mind. It's one of those weird things where it's like, oh, it doesn't bother me at all. To me, it wasn't until I was like 22 that I realized that, oh, not everybody goes to the desert when they're 8 years old and then joins a weird cult. Like I thought everybody did that. That's just part of growing up.
It's everybody's experience. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Um,
So do movies like Midsummer freak you out, or
I love Midsummer.
yeah,
Uh,
was it Heredity where there was the cult? Are those
uh,
ones that just freak you? I love Midsummer too. Oh my god.
weirdly, weirdly, cult movies don't freak me out at all. I find them fascinating. Midsummer, especially, is like that changed the way I thought about horror entirely. The idea of
Cool.
everything being so bright and colorful, I was like, of course it's bright and colorful. That's how you get in. If it was dark and dingy and scary, everyone would have left.
Right.
Uh, and the fact that they were able to make it absolutely like pants poopingly terrifying, like uh, was so good. And
Yeah.
while everything was bright and colorful.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. I had no idea the conversation was going to go there. That is very interesting. But you're all better now. So, and now you're bringing it to us through TTRPG, which is super
Oh
cool.
yeah,
Do you find elements of that coming into what you create?
yeah, absolutely. The other things that that I find that tends to pervade my work more is I'm half I'm Mexican American on like my father's side, but I'm very pale skinned. So unless I'm been out and about in the summer and I get a tan, so like I don't look it immediately unless you know what you're looking for. And so that idea of like not being what you seem or
Yeah.
like things not being as they appear, I find tends to invade like pervade my work considerably more than some of those cult experiences.
That's very cool. Yeah, there's nothing better than finding those root things within yourself and bringing it forward because there's so many people that can relate or find it weird.
Mhm.
I agree with that. As a tool for creativity, because I know that when I've written, I tap into things about myself that I don't like, or that I think
Yeah.
like, yeah, if this is not comfortable, so that's exactly where I need to go. It's kind of like whenever we do panels. I used to do a panel at Comic Cons, then I'd bring the whole group up there, and all these people were scared and they didn't know what to do. And I'd get up and be like, "Yeah, don't worry about it." First thing I do is get that audience to boo me. I'd say something horrible and get them to boo me, and I'm like, "Okay, from here on up, all you can do is be a hero because they all hate me." And by the end, they love me. It's like playing off that thing in yourself where I'm like, yeah, this is something I can say that I know is going to ring true. It's going to be part of me, and they're going to hate me for it until they realize it's not me. It's just we're all human. We all got that little thing inside us. So I love that. I think I'm speaking the same language you are when I say, oh, or I'm
It,
speaking through a lot of coffee. Could be either one.
it could be
So,
both.
what's your favorite TTRPG right now?
Right now, um,
Cthulhu Dreamt. Other than that one.
other than Cthulhu Dreamt, it's a game called Kids on Brooms. Um,
Ooh, that
yeah,
sounds good.
yeah, it's a hack of a game called Kids on Bikes, and
Right.
it's
I
all
love that
about
game.
yeah. And so I'm running a game for some friends where we're in Boar's Hearth Academy for the Arcane Arts. We don't talk about Harry Potter here. Harry Potter doesn't exist. It's totally not the same thing in the slightest. And that's all like it is very much like a let's play Harry Potter, but like my own version of it that I'm absolutely loving. It's all styled after like Arthurian legend.
Oh,
So it's a lot of fun. And that one has been great because it doesn't require a lot of setup for me, like other game systems do.
is that one on Drive Through RPG?
I believe so. I believe it is.
All right. I'm going to check. If it is, I'll put a link in the show notes so people can pick this up because if nothing else, I'm going to go pick this up. This sounds awesome.
It's great. It's as the game master, you don't have to roll a lot, which I love. And all of the rolling that happens is it's one of the only games I've ever seen where like you can succeed too much. Uh, like it's like you can roll too low and not succeed, and then you can roll too high and oh, you were a little too good at what you did. So And I absolutely
That's
love
awesome.
that. Yeah,
That's really
great.
fun. So, Snails, where can people find you?
Mostly on Twitter. I try and post somewhat frequently, but you can find me on Twitter at Bag of Snails, all one word. Um, and that's primarily where I am online these days.
Cool. And I'll put that in the show notes. I will also put the links to Cthulhu Dreamt in the show notes because you guys are the featured game this month. And I really encourage everybody to support the game, to give where they can, and to share the interview, share the Kickstarter, put it out there, because you never know who's going to see this and be like, oh yeah, Cthulhu Dreamt, I'm all about it. Bam! One person funds the whole thing. Wouldn't that be crazy? So, Snails, thank you so much for coming on. I had so much fun talking to you. And who knows, maybe in the future we can play some Kids on Brooms together. I would go crazy for that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll schedule you in.
All right. Excellent. Thanks a lot, Snails.
Yeah.
Thanks again for the fantastic interview, Snails. Your story is so cool and really inspiring to those wanting to break into the TTRPG world. If you or anyone you know has a crowdfunding effort about to launch or currently going, send them my way. I love to share cool TTRPG projects and to help people reach their goals. You can connect with me through the TTRPG Insider Facebook page or via email directly to rob@ttrpginsider.com. Please rate and review TTRPG Insider wherever you listen to this podcast. It really helps others find the show, which helps spread the word about my amazing guests. TTRPG Insider is a production of Southgate Media Group, hosted, edited, and produced by me, Rob Southgate. Thanks so much for listening to the TTRPG Insider.